All right, here we go. Good morning. Good morning, boys and girls. This is Mrs. Red, Jamie and Owen's mom. And since today is their birthday, Miss Davenport suggested that we give surprise guest reader a try from home. So today we're reading a book by an author that we just found during the time we've been home, David Walliams. We've been reading a book of his called Grandpa's Great Escape. And we've been listening to it, and it's pretty funny. Definitely recommend it. So I thought we'd try the first chapter of this book. So this is The Midnight Gang by David Walliams. Warning, will leave you in stitches. His books remind me of Roald Dahl, so they're pretty fun to read. Welcome to the world of the Midnight Gang. This is Lord Funt Hospital in London, England. It was built many years ago and should have been demolished many years ago. The hospital was named in honor of its founder, the late Lord Funt. Have a look inside Lord Funt Hospital. The children's ward, the pharmacy, Raj's ward, Nellie's ward, Sir Quentin Striller's office, the gift shop, and the basement. Meet the patients in the children's ward, high up on the 44th floor of the hospital. This is Tom. He's 12 and goes to a posh boarding school. He's hurt his head. Amber is 12. She's broken both of her arms and both of her legs, so has been in a wheelchair for some time. Robin is also 12. He's recovering from an operation to save his eyesight, and for now, can't see a thing. George is 11 and from the East End of London, which makes him a Cockney. He is recovering from having his tonsils taken out in an operation. Sally is just 10 and the youngest of the group. Because she's so ill, Sally spends most of her time sleeping. Downstairs in one of the grown-up wards is the oldest patient in the hospital, 99-year-old Nellie. Hundreds of people work at Lord Funt Hospital. Among them are Porter, a lonely figure whose real name is a mystery. His job is to move people and things around the hospital, which he never seems to leave. The matron. Despite running all the children's ward, she doesn't like children at all. Dr. Loopers has just become a doctor and is rather easy to fool. Tootsie is the hospital's dinner lady. She brings meals around on a trolley to all the patients. Nurse Maggie is the tired-looking nurse who never ever seems to get a night off of work. Dilly is one of the hospital's cleaners. You can always tell where she's cleaned, as there will be a long trail of cigarette ash. Mr. Codd is the old chemist. He has a hearing aid and thick glasses. Mr. Codd runs the pharmacy in the hospital. Sir Quentin Strillers is the upper-class hospital principal and is even in charge of everyone and everything. From outside the hospital, there's Mr. Thews, the headmaster of Tom's school, St. Willet's boarding school for boys. Looks like the children's ward. That reminds me of another book, Matilda. Midnight is the time when all the children are fast asleep, except, of course, for the Midnight Game. That is the time when their adventures are just beginning. All right, so that was the prologue. And I'll read chapter 1. It's pretty short. Chapter 1, Monster Man. Arrgh! Screamed the boy. The most monstrous face he'd ever seen was peering down at him. It was the face of a man, but it was completely lopsided. One side was larger than it should have been, the other was smaller. The face smiled as if to calm the boy down, only to reveal a set of broken and rotten teeth. This made the boy even more scared than before. Ah! He screamed again. You will be all right, young sir. Please try and be calm, slurred the man. His face was so misshapen. That was his speech. Sorry. Who was this man, and where was he taking the boy? It was only then that the boy realized he was lying on his back, staring straight up. It felt almost as if he was floating, but something was rattling. He was rattling. The boy realized he must be lying on a trolley with wonky wheels. His head clouded with questions. Where was he? How did he get here? Why couldn't he remember a thing? And most importantly, who was this terrifying man monster? The trolley traveled slowly down the long corridor. The boy could hear the sound of something being dragged along the floor. It sounded like the squeak of a shoe. He looked down. The man was limping. Just like his face, one side of his body was smaller than the other. So the man was dragging his withered leg along with him. It looked like every moment might be painful. Bang! A pair of tall doors swung open and the trolley trundled into a room and came to a stop. Then some curtains were drawn around the boy. I hope that wasn't too uncomfortable, young sir, said the man. The boy thought it was curious that this man called him sir. He'd never been called sir in his life. He was only 12. Sir was a title reserved only for teachers at his boarding school. Now you wait here. I'm just the porter. Let me get the nurse. Nurse! As he lay there, the boy felt strangely disconnected from his own body. It felt limp, lifeless. The pain, though, was in his head. It was throbbing, hot. If the feeling could be a color, it would be red. A bright, hot, raging red. The pain was so intense he closed his eyes. When he opened them, he realized he was staring straight up at bright fluorescent light. This made his head ache even more than before. Then he heard the sound of footsteps approaching. The curtain was whisked back. A large older lady in a blue and white uniform with a hat leaned over and examined the boy's head. Dark circles framed her bloodshot eyes. Gray, wiry hair squatted on her head. Her face was red raw, as if she'd scrubbed it with a cheese grater. In brief, she had the appearance of someone who had not slept for a week and was angry about it. Oh, dearie me, oh, dearie me, oh, dearie me, she muttered to nobody in particular. In his confused state, the boy took a moment to realize this woman was in fact dressed as a nurse. At last the boy realized where he was, a hospital. He'd never been in one before, except the day he was born, and he couldn't remember that. The boy's eyes drifted up to the lady's name badge. Nurse Meese, Lord Funt Hospital. That is a bump, a big bump, a very big bump. Now, does this hurt? She said as she poked the boy hard on his head with her finger. Ow! He screamed so loudly it echoed down the corridor. Some slight pain, muttered the nurse. Now, just let me get the doctor. Doctor! The curtain was whisked across and then back again. As the boy lay there staring at the ceiling, he could hear the sound of footsteps departing. Doctor! She barked out again, now some way down the corridor. Coming, nurse, came a voice from far off. Quickly, she shouted. Sorry, said the voice. Then there was the sound of footsteps approaching at speed. The curtain was whisked back. A young, pointy-faced man breezed in, his long white coat trailing behind him. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, announced a posh voice. It was a doctor, and he was somewhat out of breath having had to run. Looking up, the boy read the man's name badge, Dr. Loopers. That is a big bump. Does this hurt? The man took out a pencil from his breast pocket. He then held one end and tapped the boy's head with it. Ow! The boy screamed again. It wasn't as bad as being jabbed by a gnarly old finger, but it still hurt. Sorry. Please don't report me. I've only just graduated as a doctor, you see. I won't, muttered the boy. Are you sure? Quite sure. Thank you. Now I need to make sure I cross the I's and dot the T's. I have just this little admissions form to fill in. The man then proceeded to roll out a form that looked as if it might take a week to complete. The boy sighed. So, young man, began the doctor in a sing-song tone he hoped might make this boring task fun, what is your name? The boy's mind went blank. He'd never forgotten his own name before. Name? Asked the doctor again. But try as he might, the boy couldn't remember it. I don't know, he spluttered. That's the end of chapter 1 of The Midnight Gang. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day.